How's it yangin', dudes and dudettes? My name is Sean, and welcome back, where we like to poke a lot of fun at the mainstream media. This is what we're going to do, so make sure that gravy stays flowing, guys, because you know we are always going to be calling out the corruption, and we got to be sure we share videos like this. Now, this isn't necessarily corruption, but it is a little bit of, I don't know, it's distasteful, let's say this. So yeah, you know, they're going to make a lot of fluffy pieces, and I appreciate them celebrating Yang for what he's done and stuff like that, but, you know, that didn't stop you, yesterday or months before constantly, touting misconceptions and falsehoods about UBI and stuff like that, all the Bernie bros and the Bernie YouTubers and stuff like that. So as much as I respect a lot of them, you can't, and then of course, the Bernie bros in every single comment section constantly just ragging on him, sounding a lot like, Trump, like hardcore Trump supporters, not like ones who are open-minded, you know what I mean, and who just want to actually fix some things, but not like the hardcore, meme lords. That's how they're acting, the Bernie bros are in the comment section. Then they turn around like, oh, and now join the Sanders. No, it's not the way it works. You can't sit there and bash us, not listen to us, and stuff like that. So, like, and you'll see, articles and stuff like this. Bernie Sanders stands to benefit most from Andrew Yang dropping out, with 69% of the businessmen support also liking the senator. Just because they like him don't mean they'll support him. We are a data-driven movement. Over half of the Yang gang, it says, or a little bit less, about 49% say that they will not back anybody else. They will either write Andrew Yang's name in or they'll abstain from voting. Now, there's also two other options that you could do. One would be to go with Trump. Now, I understand a lot of people would do that. I not personally do it because he's given a lot of tax breaks to the rich. He's done some good things, believe it or not. The media won't tell you that. He has done a few good things. Like, there's a lot of trade deals that he's gotten back into our favor, and that's just a fact. But it's all been realigned to support the 1%, and that's what he promised to not do. Now, on the other hand, you might like Trump because he's a monkey wrench in the system, and it scares the fuck out of the establishment, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing. So I can see why there might be a lot of the Trumpers who came to this channel going back to Trump, right? Of course, I was going to be a fan of me. I know you are. Yeah, it's okay. You ain't got to tell me. It's okay. I love you too. Anyway, okay, so now the opposite is Bernie Sanders. Yes, some of them were former Bernie bros and came over to Yang. But once they got into Yang and they started realizing that a lot of the other candidates, including Bernie, sometimes is childish. And when I mean childish, I mean ideologically driven. Only their ideology is above everything else. What they think is good is above everything else. If Andrew Yang happened to be presented with facts that showed, like, legitimate facts where the consensus of American scientists and analysts say this is the way this should be done, he would change that. You know what I mean? He would do what the data says. Everybody else is not like that. So those are pretty much the three options that you would have. Now, I'm not going nowhere. I'm not going to be voting for anybody. I'm not going to be, and it's not because out of spite. Nobody else has earned, they're not talking about the policy. They're not really talking about the issues. Bernie Sanders covers a couple of issues, but it's only because they're such popular issues right now. You know what I mean? They're not because they're actually going to fix a lot of the systemic problems like Andrew Yang wanted to do. So now the Bernie bros are trying to seduce Andrew Yang, right? Bernie bros seduce Yang gang after Andrew Yang drops out. No, they haven't. And like I just said before, you're not going to get us, or at least half of us, because you never was cordial to us anyways. We have a more likely chance of voting Tulsi Gabbard over Bernie Sanders. I hate to tell people that, and they don't like to believe it. Everyone wants to spin it as, Andrew Yang is completely Bernie Sanders. He's not. It's just not the way it is. And he could come out and support Bernie Sanders. I don't know. He says he's going to support whoever the Democratic nominee is. Now, there's also some fishy stuff going on, because I think that, and this is just pure conjecture on my part, but there's no reason why you would drop out before Tulsi Gabbard when she was doing worse than you earlier on, of course, because of Clinton, but it's beside the point. There's absolutely no reason why, before any of the results coming in, Andrew Yang would have just dropped out. CNN was even saying that if he wouldn't have dropped out right then and made a publicized, televised announcement, even the day before, he was campaigning and telling about how he can be, and I was like, it's just weird how you go from, a campaign rally and then 12 hours later dropping out while the votes are still coming in. While for the longest time, the votes showed you being in fourth, and you only dropped down to fifth or sixth, and you was fighting. You could have been, even CNN said you would have been higher than Tom Steyer, maybe even Joe Biden, if you wouldn't have made that announcement, and then people just, either stopped voting or switched to Sanders in the primary, right? So my guess is there's probably been a campaign in contact with him and saying, hey, we'll put you on the cabinet or VP position if you go ahead and, drop out now. So if that's the case, he'll probably come out and support somebody soon. But that's just all conjecture on my part. I don't really know. It's just, normally 1 + 1 = 2, and there's, he was also starting to run really dangerously low on cash too. So that's also part of it, so. Let's get into this. It says Andrew Yang has dropped out of the race to become the Democratic presidential nominee. Bernie Sanders supporters have begun encouraging Yang Gang to campaign for Sanders. They should have started doing that a long time ago, and not just trying to meme on us or like Yang has no chance and Yang is a snake and all this other stuff. And that's what they do. Believe it or not, that's what they do. This guy's going to show a couple examples where they're not, but they do. So, but it's unlikely Yang will endorse Sanders, who doesn't support introducing a universal basic income. Yang has dropped out after canvassing around 2.8%. In New Hampshire primaries, he has decided to pull out of the race to become the Democratic candidate for 2020 presidential election. Naturally, his clique of supporters, known as the Yang Gang, are heartbroken. Yes, we are. Many of them have worked tirelessly to increase Yang's profile and popularity. Yes, we have. But in the end, their efforts have come to nothing. I disagree with that. That is, it's a straight up Bernie channel, isn't it? This is a little website here. It has not. We have brought UBI to the forefront of the political zeitgeist. We have made Andrew Yang a political celebrity. We have introduced monumental ideas, and on top of that, we have now positioned millions of Americans to get ahead of the curve of automation. So, I just completely disagree with that whatsoever. And on top of that, Yang single-handedly switched what was like almost a 1/16 or 1/12 of the entire Trump base. He literally like made them switch to Democrat or made them switch to independent so they can vote for Yang. That is a lot. That is not nothing. So, corrected there, buddy. Well, if rival faction that the Bernie Bros have it their way, the Yang Gang will now redirect their efforts to getting Bernie Sanders elected. However, while this seems likely in the short term, Yang has suggested he may run again in 2024. But, like I said, for reasons before, we're probably not going to support Bernie Sanders. Some of them some of them might, but there's going to be a large sector who just won't. So, and there's a reason why, and it's the reasons I said before. In Iowa primaries, Andrew Yang garnered only 1% of the raw vote because of all the corruption and all of the rigging of the DNC by Tom Perez. He also failed to secure any delegates, a pattern that is now repeated in New Hampshire as a result of his poor showing. He has now had the grace, unlike, say, Joe Biden, to drop out of the race. So, unsurprisingly, a lot of emotional Yang Gang members have taken to Twitter to express their disappointment. So I went through the 7 stages of Yang. Now it's on to 7 stages of grief. I'm still writing Yang 2020 in. I do not have a backup. That's right. There is no backup. So there's one person right here says, I want to say I appreciate Andrew Yang as a candidate, consistent and honest, something I appreciate even when I don't entirely agree with him. Would have preferred him to a lot of others, hoping the Yang Gang joins Sanders supporters and continue to fight the establishment. If people like this would have said stuff like this so early on and ingratiated the Yang Gang, maybe they would have a point. But it's not going to happen because there's for every one of these guys, there's 10 Bernie Bros, probably some in this comment section right now, who's just constantly ragging. They're worse than Trump voters in that regard. You know what I mean? So it's, and of course you have Project Veritas and stuff like that. And I am a supporter of Sanders. I like Sanders. Even though I'm not going to vote for him, I disagree with him. I'm kind of like this guy. I'm like him, but for Yang. So, I don't know. It's just the way it is. So there's they found one person who says, I'm Yang Gang, and that is indeed the plan. Some people might go, but it's not going to happen. So, yes, Bernie Bros are certainly being opportunistic and reaching out to the Yang Gang. That said, some of Andrew's supporters are willing to switch sides, at least under the circumstances of wanting to beat the DNC establishment and then later Trump. If you are voting, vote blue no matter who, you're wasting your vote. You're wasting your vote. You're not voting your conscience. You're not voting based off the policies. You could have somebody who's a sheep in wolf's clothing or wolf in sheep's clothing, however that phrase goes, like Hillary Clinton, who on the outside doesn't seem as bad as Donald Trump, but if you would have had her in office, she would have been so much worse than Donald Trump. Just as Secretary of State, she almost got embroiled us in several wars, killing. Like, people hated Trump for killing Soleimani, and Hillary Clinton did the same thing to the guy in what was it, Libya? Yeah. Anyway, so don't do that. You vote based off your conscience. If Bernie Sanders happens to be your conscience, you align more with him. Okay, so go for it. If it happens to be Trump, do that. You know what I mean? It's do what you want to do, or don't vote at all, like me. You know. So yes, Bernie are certainly optimistic and reaching out to the Yang Gang. That said, some Andrew Yang supporters are willing to switch sides. So it is kind of true. However, while there is some grassroots Yang Gang support for Sanders as their second choice, it's not clear whether Andrew Yang himself will endorse or support Sanders, because Politico reported Yang will endorse a candidate only if they come out in favor of universal basic income. Like I was saying, you either make UBI your flagship policy, or you put Yang in your cabinet. That's the only way you're going to get a majority of the Yang Gang to support you. That's it. There's no other way around it. So, yes. Says if any Democratic candidate wants his endorsement, they'll need to come out in favor of UBI 100%. So it says, it goes on to say, Sanders has repeatedly spoken in support of UBI in the abstract over the past few years. However, in practical terms, he has also said things like UBI is kind of a step too far right now for the United States. A step too far? No, socialized medicine is a step too far. Forcing everybody out of their job and insurance and then onto a medical plan over the course of 4 years, that's a step too far. Instituting a value-added tax, because Bernie Sanders points to EU. Look at the EU. We're doing the law of the EU. The EU is doing all this stuff. We need to do the EU. Okay, Bernie Sanders. Look at the EU. Almost all the countries in the EU have a value-added tax, and guess what? That rakes in billions in cash for people. For people. So if you want to look at EU, guess what? There's things like that. It's a lost cause right now, as is. So we're just going to see what Andrew Yang does. So that's it, guys. I just wanted to touch base with you because there is some weirdness going on with this. You guys know what I think about it. I think that Andrew Yang is, I think, talking to somebody on the side, but 100% he's right. You're definitely going to have UBI in the fold somehow if you want this huge new movement to be on your side, and that's going to be hard to do. So I love you guys. I will be back tomorrow. We're going to have some more corruption to expose, or at least poking fun at the mainstream media. You know what I'm saying? Because guess what? That's what we got to do. We got to keep Yang's dream alive, and that's how we are going to do it on this channel. So love you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and that's all I got for you. Bye bye.